How important is the mental health picture of recovery? Jerry Owens, a licensed medical health counselor, in the house today. Past the hour on this gorgeous day. We thank you for taking time to listen to Recovery Monday, brought to you by Powell CDC. My co-host, Lila Stafford, a licensed, what are you? A licensed? You're an addiction counselor.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, where Jerry's a mental health individual. And, of course, Bob Monserrate, the cat in the hat, who watches our chat. And in real life, he is a forensic scientist and has a wonderful understanding of alcohol and drugs, and is one of the most sought-after person of testimony. What would you call expert witness in the field of alcoholism? So example would be if you're a real famous star like, Lindsay Lohan, and the prosecution or the defense wants to come in and prove that your alcoholism is probably disease-based rather than just being a runaround girl too much. Bob would be the guy that would come in and testify to that. Or you probably wouldn't agree with that, though, would you?
No.
Yeah, I was going to say I chose the wrong one.
No, yeah, I testify to how much alcohol it takes to get to certain levels, what the retrograde extrapolation would be, previous time. You know, the science that deals with alcohol.
Okay, good. All right, and our guest today is Jerry Owens, who has been with Powell CDC on and off for years. He's a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a tough show for me because this is going to hit home for me. As I have shared with you before, I was diagnosed in 2005 with 2004, with a mental disorder. And in a minute, we're going to talk about the difference between a disorder and a, what would be the other?
Symptoms. Symptoms of a...
Well, because a disorder you can't treat with medication.
You can.
You can?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Mental health disorders, each specific disorder, some can be treated with just medication, some with talk therapy, but it depends on the disorder. As far as it's just like a medical diagnosis.
Okay.
You have to look at the specificity of the diagnosis to identify what kind of treatment it'll be.
I've been told that borderline is one of those that cannot be treated with pharmaceuticals.
That's
Would you
correct.
agree
with
that
disorder, exactly.
Oh.
With that, you're using different forms of specialized psychotherapy.
Yeah. Oh, I thought for sure he was going, oh, no, there's this pill you can take.
No.
All right. And we'll explain what it is. And again, here's why we do this show. We don't do this show because we think you have an alcohol or an addiction problem. We do this show because you know someone who does. Maybe it's going to hit home. Maybe it's a child. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's a spouse. In the I don't know how many, dozens and dozens of times I've given a talk on borderline personality disorder, and I've described what the activities and actions are of that person. It has never failed. I have one or two or more people come up and say, I think that's my husband, or I think that's my mother, or I think that's my wife. And we're going to talk about other mental disorders besides just borderline, but that is... I've always been told, Jerry, that is one of the most undiagnosed mental disorders that there are out there. That people with borderline will not accept enough treatment to where it can be either clearly diagnosed or clearly put into remission. Would you agree with that?
I think with the borderline stuff that they have really up and down, way by all kinds of moods, and sometimes it's hard for them to stay in treatment for a lengthy period of time.
Okay.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting conversation today. Now, the first thing And by the way, I didn't know Jerry was going to be here. It's not my job to ask guests to come on this show. That's Lila's opportunity. And so when Jerry walked in 15 minutes ago and I found out who he was and he gave me some documentation and it talked right up front about more borderline, it's a little freaky for me. So allow me to be, here's what I need from you, the listener, today. Allow me to be transparent. Allow me to be open and honest and share my strength, hope, and experience. No, I didn't say that right. Strength, hope, and experience with borderline in hopes that, unfortunately, in hopes that it will help you understand why maybe someone you know suffers the way they do. Now, Jerry, tell me how a person becomes borderline.
Okay.
You're not born with a gene. It's not a disease.
Yeah. There's two, okay, almost all these disorders, it's a complex interreaction between genetic loading and hereditary. Okay. Now,
genetic loading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And basically environmental factors. You look at both those factors, and it's an interaction between the two of those. Now, when you look at some of the data with borderline personality disorder, there is some suggestion that it tends to run in families. But again, you can't tell which is the chicken or which is the egg, because if you have a borderline situation, some of the symptoms of that disorder is having chaotic relationships.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of this theoretic, we don't really know. Okay, but it used to be it was purely environmental. You grow up in a situation when you're under a lot of abuse, that kind of situation, or neglect. But we're seeing that there's some borderline folks who look like they had a pretty normal kind of childhood. So it's an interaction between both those variables.
I've heard that someone who is diagnosed with borderline had a traumatic experience, either singularly or one after another, the same over another, a same over another, when they're young, 6, 8, 10, and that causes them to get stuck emotionally when they're presented with situations that remind them of what they went through as a child.
That's accurate in the majority of the cases, but there's, just like any other diagnosis, there are exceptions to the rule, and that's where we're talking about there's some evidence that this is coming from the University of Iowa. There's some evidence that there's a genetic component also.
Okay.
Okay.
I've heard that when it comes to and we're not going to talk completely about borderline today. I just kind of want to get this cleared up front. I've heard that one of the most common types of borderline are women who were sexually abused as a young girl or child.
Exactly. That would certainly be one of the variables or one of the pre-existing conditions that would show up with a lot of borderline.
And what would be a couple of others?
A young man who'd been verbally abused by a parent, physically abused by a parent, had a parent that would seek having coercive discipline. So on one level, they might be real nice and let the kid get away with A, B, and C, but then the next day he's beating the kid up because he didn't make his bed.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
All right.
But it typically it's some combination of abuse and neglect.
All right, and another popular, I hate that word, but another type of mental disorder, would you put that as the up and down one?
Bipolar disorder.
Bipolar. Is that a mental disorder?
Exactly.
Okay, but that could be treated with pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, now that's on the other end of the continuum. Most people with borderline personality disorder are not going to get better, not unless they're taking a mood stabilizer. Okay, so that works a lot better than talk therapy for a bipolar disorder. So they need a specific mood stabilizer.
Bipolar does.
Bipolar does. So that would be a drug like lithium or Depakote. those kinds of medications.
And I hear too often the terms, boy, this terrible thing happened with this person that had bipolar and they went off their meds. Because when they're on their meds, they think I'm okay, I'm acting normal, I don't need my meds.
Yeah, in my business, since it's addiction, a very high percentage of the times when folks who are bipolar go off their meds, they go into a manic phase and they start drinking or drugging again. You know, so what you're saying is exactly right. So
People that are depressed do the same thing. They take medication for depression and then they're feeling okay and they think I don't have to take it anymore, so they quit taking it. It's not uncommon.
yeah,
How often is addiction / alcoholism a symptom? Well, forget the word symptom. Shoot, I'm sorry. I'm trying to ask the right questions. Is there with bipolar or borderline?
Okay, let me look at it in a broad way first.
Please.
Okay? When you look at, let's say, a diagnostic category like alcohol dependence, 48% of the people who are alcohol dependent also have a co-occurring mental health disorder. Okay. When you look at disorders other than alcoholism, other forms of drug dependence, the rate of co-occurring disorders tends to be higher, like 55%, 60%. So it's very important when you're dealing with an addiction to be able to treat both sides of the fence at once, or the likelihood of them maintaining long-term abstinence is pretty difficult.
Yeah, I remember when my therapist, after whatever it was, a couple months, diagnosed me with borderline. I was given the impression that I shouldn't try to stop drinking at this time, because until we get the borderline fixed, I'll just continue to go back to the bottle. Is that a common scenario?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and again, that especially if the condition was pre-existing before the alcohol or the drug dependence developed, that tells you very clearly you need to aggressively treat both disorders at once, sometimes only treat one before you can, do with the other. But again, you're going to have some different schools of thought with that.
I was treated 5 years.
Okay.
At the end of the 5th year, he told me, "Congratulations, you've been in remission for a year." And he looked me square in the eye and said, "Now you have no excuse to quit drinking." And I quit within 5 months. And I've stayed sober for 1,242 days. So a little over three years.
Fabulous.
So would someone like him need to go back to therapy to make sure? I mean, I don't, to say that, or do you still go to therapy? I don't know.
I don't, but he's available to me, but I don't go. But I'll tell you why I don't go, and this is the smile. It's the 12 steps. The 12 steps keep me absolutely constantly aware of my actions and what I'm doing wrong. And so those meetings are as good, if not better, for me than individual one-on-one therapy. Okay. I mean, it's just magic that Jesus came and said, "Okay, here's your borderline, and I'm going to give you this guy to walk you through borderline. And then when he's figured that out, then we're going to make you stop drinking. And the thing that's going to keep you glued together is Jesus." And that's the way it works for me. Sure. And I mean, you don't have to be faith-based, but that's just the way it worked for me.
And with all these disorders, there's no exact roadmap. I mean, the therapies and treatments are going to be same but different. And are there different approaches to, depending on what the client preferences are?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
So for you, it really helped, especially like in the 12-step program, that it's spiritually oriented. So that fits in with your values and works very well.
Well, the good news is I already knew who my creator was and I had a relationship with him. But as most borderline or alcoholics, I had yet to surrender my own personal will. And once I did that, and I don't think that happened in a minute. I think I started it in a minute, but that was a crockpot process. But I think probably 75 to 90 days into my sobriety, I had serenity, All right, we're coming back. Great conversation today. Jerry Owens, a licensed mental health counselor from Powell CDC on Recovery Mondays.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists, to rehabilitation, to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
This is Dan Fry, host of A Rebels Cause Radio, and I'm here to ask you a question. Are you tired of being marketed a second-rate product at a first-rate price? Or perhaps more importantly, do you want to wear something that shows who you are, which is a Christian, but doesn't look silly or even worse, just theologically incorrect? I want to introduce you to Wrath and Grace Clothing. They're a company that wants to provide you with clothes that you actually like, prices you can afford, and most importantly, they offer a sound, biblical message that represents who you are as a Christian. From the message presented in the graphics to the fit and finish, they have made their company on first-rate designs and high-quality fabrics and inks, and offered at a price you can afford. Wrath and Grace Clothing. Their mission is to proclaim the wrath and the grace of a sovereign God, one shirt at a time. Go to wrathandgrace.com to check out all their designs. That's wrathandgrace.com.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling.
We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
21 minutes after the hour on this Recovery Monday with Lila Stafford from Powell CDC and Bob Monserrate, the cat in the hat watching the chat. The reason we have Bob here is for many reasons. He's a multi-faceted man. But one of them is we have a live chat that is running coherently with the radio program at webcast1live.com, webcast, live.com. And should you not want to have your voice heard but want to ask a question or make a comment, you can jump on there. And we ask that you not do it anonymously, but we also don't ask for name, social security number, address, and DNA. Some people use nicknames. That's fine. If you get derogatory, then you'll be, we just won't pay attention to you. But it is a way for you to, without sharing your voice or picking up a phone, for you to ask a question or make a comment. And again, that's Webcast, WEBCASTONE live.com. And the telephone number is 244-0077, 244-0077. My special guest today, Jerry Owens, who's a licensed mental health counselor at Powell CDC and works with people who have substance abuse. Because now, Jerry, is this a true statement that people who have substance abuse often have an underlying mental disorder? Or is it people with an underlying mental disorder usually have substance abuse?
Good question. The fancy word for that is called psychiatric comorbidity. And what we're talking about there is probability. So what this would say...
Say that again, psychiatric.
Comorbidity.
Comorbidity, okay.
And what we're getting at is probability. So if someone has a pre-existing addiction, they will more likely develop a mental health disorder than someone who doesn't have addiction. And it also goes in the other way. Someone who has a pre-existing mental health condition will more likely develop an addiction than someone who doesn't have a mental health condition. So it's ham and eggs.
Okay.
They tend to go together.
All right. I've had people inside my 12-step program, which I'm just so committed to, question whether I am, quote unquote, a alcoholic because of this very reason. Raised in a family where a bottle of ancient age sat on the counter every day, every day of the week, of the year, of the month, forever. There was always a case of beer in the refrigerator. There was always other liquors available to me at the bar that we had in our house. I didn't like to taste a beer. I didn't like to taste a liquor. In fact, I was considered a teetotaler until I was 34 years old. Something changed very drastic in my life, and I decided I'd start drinking. And I had a 16-year drinking career. But because it didn't hit me when I was 12 and I tasted my first beer, or 16 when I remember mixing slow gin. How did you make a slow gin fizz? Slow gin and Coke?
No, I was a bartender. I don't know.
Okay. Slow gin, I could drink. And then in college, every once in a while, I'd have a Tanqueray and tonic. But I was the guy that literally would leave a half a glass with the ice melted. And people inside the 12-step program say, there's no way you're an alcoholic. I've always said, well, I have a mental disorder that created the alcoholism. Is that?
Yeah, I think okay. What happened, you most likely, a diagnosis like borderline personality disorder, that would be a diagnosis that started for you when you were in middle school.
Yeah, it started for me when I was about 8 or 9.
Yeah, so you had the pre-existing mental health condition. Okay. And at some point, you hit a point where things were so stressful and you couldn't cope that at that point in your life, you were more vulnerable to develop alcohol dependence. You had some control for a long time, but there was at one point when things were unmanageable enough in your life where you got to be like the rest of us, where one is too many, 1,000 wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But that didn't show up till you were hitting a point of no return as far as other stressors in your life.
Yeah, because I went through, by the time from my age 8 to 34, I'm so embarrassed to talk about this, but it is what it is. 2 divorces with 2 different, well, I guess it would be 2 different women if it was 2 divorces, 2 children, failed businesses, multiple firings because I was just a terrible employee. But it was at age 34 that I caused a terrible thing to happen in my life.
Sure.
And I went to the bottle.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks who have pre-existing anxiety or pre-existing depression. They've had that for a long period of time, and they accidentally discover when they drink or when they get high, they don't have their symptoms.
Right.
So for them, it's like 2 for 1.
All right.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about my story, and I appreciate that. I want to hear a little of yours if you'll share with me.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit of your story.
I grew up in
You look about 27.
Oh, double that, and
okay.
plus 6.
All right.
Anyhow, I grew up in a long chain of alcoholics. As far as I know, every male Owens in my group, just about all of them had problem with alcoholism, and then the later generations it morphed into drugs.
Oh my!
So it just tended to happen that way, and I think mine was a little bit unique. I swore I wouldn't be like my father who drank, but I did the same thing with marijuana. Kind of like you, kept it in hand until I ran into some things I couldn't handle and just started smoking my brains out every day. About the time I was 24. And within 3 years, my wife said I can't live like this anymore, and we had 2 kids at the time, and I certainly loved her to pieces, and I didn't want to I didn't want to not be a parent to my kids, so that was sufficient motivation for me to get help.
Did you have alcohol too, or just smoking dope?
It's mostly, I certainly smoked, it's mostly smoking dope.
Okay.
But I don't want to say I didn't have some problems with alcohol too. But it was mostly, my primary drug, the thing that got me excited was marijuana. Yeah.
All right. Now, if a person, and boy, this is going to be a tough question, I know, because it's like saying, well, how do you know if you're an alcoholic? But how do you know if you smoke too much marijuana?
The essential things that happen is we love it too much. I remember talking to this kid. His name was Nathan, and he was in middle school. And you know how kids are innocent. Okay, Nathan was in trouble for having pot in his locker, and the police came to school, and so I got to talk to him, and Nathan would, when I look at his record, supportive parents, above average student, but about 6 months ago, this whole thing went off the cliff, and I said to Nathan, on a 1 to 10, how much do you like getting high? He looked me in the eye, and he said 40. 40.
Okay.
So essentially what addiction means, we love it too much. Because he went on to say, well, I used to play soccer, but I don't care anymore. I used to get my homework done all the time, but I'd rather just hang out with my buddies. That kind of stuff. So we love it so much that the things that used to make a difference don't make a difference anymore. We put all our energy into maintaining our addiction rather than being a good child, a good parent, a good husband, blah, blah, blah.
All right. Jerry Owens is our guest. He's a licensed mental health counselor with Powell CDC. Lila Stafford in the house, my co-host, along with Bob Monserrate, the cat in the hat. Phone lines are available to you at 244-0077. Can
I finish that statement?
Absolutely.
There's another part. Thank you. The other thing that happens when addicted people use whatever their substance of choice is, they get a surge of dopamine. And that's what the rush is. That's what makes them happy. That's what my ship has come in kind of feeling. And it works 100% of the time. The other part, though, once that dopamine wears off, your brain is depleted of the natural neurochemicals that make you happy, and you feel blah.
Right.
You feel empty.
Right.
You feel bored. And the only way to get back to that state is to get that surge of dopamine. So in a sense, negative reinforcement maintains the addiction because it's the only way we know how to have pleasure again. Addicted people mix up happiness and pleasure, however.
Addictive people mix up happy and pleasure.
They think they're the same thing, but they're not.
Okay, I'm listening.
To be happy, we have to earn it. Okay? A lot of times it's hard work. Pleasure comes instantaneously. But everybody I know that's been addicted for a period of time, they have pleasure in their life one way, but nearly all of them are chronically unhappy. Okay? Because they know that the things are important, they've started to sabotage. From this orientation, a lot of them have lost their faith. Okay, they've lost the love of their families. They know at some level they haven't lived up to who they wanted to be. And all they got is that. But they know 100% of the time if they jump on that drug, whatever it is, they're going to have some pleasure to get rid of that blah feeling.
Right, okay.
But that's not going to sustain anything. That's a lot of why in AA and the stuff you talk about, you have to find something to replace it. So a lot of that is the spirituality stuff in AA, and then for other people, it's different things. But
yeah, I had I don't know how you define a good friend. This was not a person that I talked to often, but this was a person who, when we talked, we started at 8 rather than 1. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
We would get right into the heavy stuff.
Sure.
And after I quit drinking, I did. I loaded up my spirituality, and I focused on that. I joined Bible studies rather than happy hours, And this person who I care about a lot once looked at me frustratingly and says, you just traded one drug for another. You traded alcohol for Jesus, and you're still an a-hole, when it comes to on the edges of my personality.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Sure.
Oh, I was hoping
It
you'd tell me
can.
she's
I mean,
wrong.
it depends. I mean, I don't know the context. Okay, I don't know the context.
Right.
But
Well, I think she's probably right. I do.
I mean, I don't know.
Now, you talk about marijuana, and we got to watch a break here, but the typical stereotype of the guy who smokes marijuana is kind of what you just said a minute ago about that kid. I don't play soccer anymore, and I just sit around, and I play video games and eat Cheetos. Mm-hmm. And yet I know men who I have played golf with at high-level country clubs who will go through 2 or 3 doobies in an 18 round of golf. And they do that. They don't golf every day, but they smoke every day. But they are incredibly, incredibly productive members of society.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same with alcohol. I mean, there are some people who can use substances and it doesn't get in the way. I mean, they can continue to, live up to their values. People who are addicted, ultimately we stop being who we're supposed to be and we violate our values over and over again. But there are some people who can handle it, and that doesn't happen.
All right, I'm going to write down violate values because that's where I want to pick up when we come back. And for those of you that listen to this program, you know where I'm going, don't you? I'm going to identity, okay? We're going to talk about, when we come back next, the identity that we ignore when drugs and alcohol are involved and other mental disorders. That's what we're going to talk about when we come back. I hope you stick with me. You can join us if you want, 244-0077. It's Recovery Monday from Powell CDC live here at webcast1live.com.
Now,
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
All right, 22 before the top, Salem Radio Network News at the top of the hour, and then Michael Mudloff with West Kirk Presbyterian Church. I have taken so much of Mr. Owens' time on my own journey that we're not getting to many of the things that are important for us to hear, and I apologize to you for that. So I've asked Mr. Owens to return next week, and I promise not to dominate the conversation with my own wants and needs and stories, but hopefully you listening to this has helped you understand. You said something about violate our values. Where do those values come from? Values is that word. I mean, are morals and values the same?
Morals are the rules, so to speak, are the expectations. Values are the things we internalize. If we follow our values, typically that makes us feel some degree of happiness, like I was talking about before, or some degree of contentment. But if as all humans do, if we violate those values, which are associated with morals, we're going to start feeling some kind of emotional pain.
When I ran large companies and had multi employees, I was smart enough in HR to know I couldn't ask if they were a Christian. So what I would do is I would say, how do you know the difference between right and wrong? And if they couldn't nail it down to a power greater than themselves, then I usually figured that there was no creator in their life. I find that those values and morals are easily detectable because they lie there open to the naked eye, except like the Bible says, we have scales over our eyes, and those scales are created by sin. And when we remove those sins, we clearly see what the Creator, I call him God, his son is Jesus, what our Creator intended us to be. And that is our identity, the identity to which we were born to be. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you for your faith statement, but from a mental health.
No, I sure. I mean, that's, our parents, have values, their spiritual values are going to pass on to us, but at a more basic level, you're talking about the whole whole thing there, right there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is just something I'm studying, so I'm kind of talking out loud, but I'm beginning to believe that God truly did create each one of us to have a purpose.
Sure.
Maybe it's not singular, but it's not vast either. Mm-hmm. And you can discover what that purpose is by finding our natural spiritual gifts. Okay. I don't know what spiritual gift would be pennies, counting pennies and appreciating pennies. My wife has that spiritual gift. I do not. Mm-hmm. And if I were to try to pursue something where I had to keep track of pennies, I would fail. But where my wife is incredibly successful. But it frustrates me when she counts pennies because I don't get it. I mean, I do get it because I'm a man, because I'm an adult, but I don't get why pennies are so important until I find that when I've been in charge of the pennies, I mess it up.
Sure.
So,
sure. But in a lot of those values, we're going to learn from our parents.
Yeah, but see, that's what got me in trouble.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but that's,
I mean, if you say borderline can be tied to genetic loading and environment, boy, did I just figure out where my problem started.
Okay. And but going back to that, it's typically a combination of both. Yeah. But it's really hard to know, like I said earlier, how much is the chicken, how much is the egg, and that kind of stuff. I mean, what you've done, though, you're saying with the help of psychotherapy, you were able to get things stable enough where you could stop drinking and be relatively happy in your life. That's fabulous.
Thank you. But yet still there are triggers.
Sure.
I quite frankly went through one this morning. Mm-hmm. It's a God thing that you're here today. I'm just telling you.
Sure.
I've been cruising along just fine for a long time. And a trigger came along this morning and I flipped out. And I haven't had a drink in 1,241 days. I completely understand my identity, or not completely, but have an idea. But yet I was not able to control that fear of, what was I afraid of? Abandonment and betrayal.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. I mean, that's
that
the
is a
core
trigger for
symptom
of borderline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
For those of you that don't know and haven't Googled borderline, and you tell me if this is right or wrong, borderline is where the sense of insecurity runs so deep. And what's funny is I don't seem insecure on the outside, but inside I'm scared to death. Absolutely scared to death. And if I understand it, my type of borderline is that if I get a sense, first of all, I'm intensely loyal. Do anything for you. But when I get a sense that you're going to abandon or betray me, by God, I'm going to do it to you first. And I'm going to do it hard. And I am going to make you never, ever forget that you messed with me.
But Mac, if you're doing that to someone you love, then what? I mean,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And of course you do it to the people you love. They're the people that you want to feel secure in the most. Mm-hmm. And they're the people that you're around the most. Mm-hmm. And so you're the people that I think are going to abandon and betray me the most. That and the people that you work with.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're talking about, I mean, I know what you're talking about is pretty scary for you, but on another level, you know, this is the human condition. We are imperfect. You know, we are going to do things that hurt people. We're going to do things that violate values. And
that's unacceptable.
I think that's God's purpose. I assume he created us imperfect, and somehow he wants to, you know, develop as a whole person like you've talked about and regain that lost potential. I mean, people don't stay sober not unless they move up the food chain one way or the other.
Right.
And they start to function at a higher level.
Yeah, until somebody drags you back down and reminds you.
Sure, but it's a short-term thing rather than a long-term.
Right, I agree.
And what you did here is you picked it up right away. In the old days, you would have blamed that other person and never saw yourself as making a mistake. Now you could see right away, bing, it was me who went over the line, not them.
I walked up 20 minutes later and made an amend.
Exactly. You wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. You would have thought the other person was...
I would have done that 4 years ago.
Yeah, okay, well, sure. But so that's the difference now. You catch it quicker and you make amends quicker and you have more guilt when you do it.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, Lila, because I have found that. And Doctor or Jerry, it's guilt, but it's not a guilty guilt. It's a I understand what I did and I know it's wrong and I need to make amend guilt. Right?
Right, exactly.
I'm not the puppy that sits in the corner with my ears down and my tails between my legs trying to figure out why Daddy just yelled at me.
Exactly.
I know exactly because I lifted my leg on that planter and Daddy likes that planter.
Yeah.
I don't pee inside, by the way.
Okay.
Bob, any thoughts or comments?
Well, I'm just wondering about, were you offended? I mean, was it something that you were offended when somebody said something or did something? Would you consider it that?
This morning or in general?
Well, when
yeah,
something...
Yeah, you could consider that. Because part of my program of recovery is I have prayed, and God has given me the gift where I'm very rarely offended anymore.
That's why I was wondering, is it possible to be unoffendable?
Is it possible to be unoffendable? Because I got to tell you, I'm close.
Is it possible to be
unoffendable? In other words, you can't offend me.
Well, I think I suppose that is possible, But you would have so many barriers up, you would also block out a lot of good stuff when you were doing that.
Yeah. All right, we're coming back. Jerry Owens is our guest. He's a licensed mental health counselor at Powell CDC. Bob Monserrate in the house, along with Lila Stafford, produced by Ryan. And we'll be back live on Recovery Monday.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Ten before the top, Salem Radio Network News, and then Michael Mudloff with True Blue. Jerry just said something really important. Bob, say what you were going to say, or say what you said, and then Jerry, say the answer again.
Well, I was saying that a borderline sometimes needs continuous proof that their partner loves them. Mm-hmm. But in order
don't say
ones that they love.
Don't say proof, please. Say nurturing. We just need nurtured. I mean, my wife will write me a sticky note, and it'll make me smile all day long.
Doesn't that mean she loves you?
Is that proof? I don't. Okay, go ahead. When you say to somebody, "I want proof,"
validation.
There you go.
That's a good scientific term.
All right. Shut up. I'm surrounded by all these people that are so smarter than I am.
But I think the only way that it can be proven, and I'm just saying, is that therefore you have to then you're constantly tested by that individual, meaning that you're going to be tested by negative actions toward you, or whatever the case is, that person could be offended and could take it terribly, that this is not showing love. Mm-hmm. But yet, in the mind of the borderline, it may be perceived as you have to constantly show me that you care for me, you love me, and so forth.
I mean, to me, and I've worked a lot on this too, but to me, being offended is the master of manipulation. You know, I've been a talk show host a long time, and I've never been a pontificator, Jerry. I've always enjoyed conversation.
Sure.
And usually it's with people that we have enough of a difference that it's an interesting conversation.
Right.
And when it's a person who we have a big difference with, mm-hmm. we'll get 2 or 3 statements into a conversation, and then they'll say, well, I'm offended. And all of a sudden the conversation is shifted. Mm-hmm. Or I have someone in my family, they'll say, okay, the conversation's over, I'm leaving. You said something that offended me, or you did something, and I used to say, tell me what that list is and I won't do it. Well, they're not going to give you a list mm-hmm. because that's their out of getting out of the conversation.
Sure. I'm going to respond to both of you. What happens...
Get in front of the microphone.
What happens when we have a condition like borderline personality disorder or emotional intensity disorder, if we don't get it treated, we are so needy for the approval from other people, we tend to wear them out and they go away. And so what happens when someone gets good therapy for this kind of disorder, gradually the intensity and frequency of their emotional outbursts continues to decrease. And then the people around them are going to have higher levels of trust.
Okay, but Jerry, this is what I was asking Mac before. He was treated for this, and then he turned to God and didn't go to therapy anymore. But it seems to me like this would be an ongoing therapy thing.
Well, but Lila, I do go to therapy, and it's a 12-step rooms.
Okay.
What?
But that's general. That's general.
Well, okay.
I mean, it's not like one-on-one therapy where if something's happening, then I can go ask specifically
That's why I
about
got a
that.
sponsor. That's why I've got a dozen guys, literally a dozen guys, not 100, but a dozen guys inside of my Bible studies that we have just this unbelievable trusting relationship. You know, but
I think you're hearing something different today from a therapist than you would hear from God.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know what happened today, but if you had been seeing a therapist, that you would have been reminded about how to.
Well, here's the sad thing, Lila. I knew the answers.
Yeah.
In my head, I was playing the movie ahead. I knew. I knew. I had an out of body. I'm arguing with someone, and I'm taking it out on them, and they had nothing to do with it. And before I knew it, they had done something wrong, and now I'm arguing with them. It borderline to the max, right there, right?
It can't. Yeah, but other people would do that too, not just borderline people.
Oh, really?
I mean, yeah.
Normies?
Sure. I mean, if we're in a lot of emotional pain, I mean, psychological maturity means being able to carry a lot of emotional pain and not dump it out on other people.
So I am psychologically
That's a good
immature.
quote, right? But I think the key that you said, Jerry, is if that person, see, that's the if they seek counseling. Now, Mac, did you ever think you needed to do that?
Do what?
Seek counseling did you even know you had a problem?
Well, to be honest with you, I've been in and out of counseling since I was 6 or 8 years old. I have always been a very confused, troubled, just difficult person to get along with. And borderline explained half of it. And 12-step program gave me the other half. 12-step program gave me the tools to implement what I had learned in therapy.
And that makes all kinds of sense to me.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, because what happens in therapy, ideally we get a roadmap to understand what went wrong. And we start to connect the pieces. That's called insight. And so therefore, we see the world with different eyes. And so sometimes, just one course of therapy is sufficient. It's different for different people.
Yeah, and Lila,
Okay.
don't get me wrong. I still have a relationship with my counselor, and I could call today and I could go back in. My counselor and I have gotten to the point where if I go in and I say, this person did this, this, and this, and then I reacted this way, he's going to look at me and say, yeah, why did you expect anything different out of them and yourself, Mac? Mm-hmm. See, a lot of times the person, me, doesn't know that I would react that way. It's keeping your side of the street clean.
Yeah.
I go in and dump everything about the other guy's side of the street. Well, I've now understood and I know, my side, what I did to cause that. And so once I can identify that within the relationship, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Now, I can't imagine a week going by. There's never been a week gone by that I haven't been to a meeting. Never. Now, I don't know if somebody at 20 some years can say that. I have not in 3 1/3 years had 7 days go by that I have not been in a meeting. But I have months that go by where I don't sit with my therapist.
But what you did with the AA 12 steps is Okay. Before you got involved in AA, when something went wrong, to use AA talk, you took the other person's inventory.
Absolutely.
If they wouldn't have done A, B, and C, I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Now, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
You've learned to take, if your behavior goes against your values, you take your inventory.
Right. Correct.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying.
And then I get mad when other people don't take their own inventory.
Yeah.
So I don't have to. Jerry, I appreciate you being here so much today, and I'm totally sidetracked what you wanted to talk about. So I'm going to keep these, and you're to come back next week, right?
Yes, sir.
And next week I will keep my problems off of the radio, and we will listen to this. Now, I joke about that, but I just know there's somebody out there that heard something today. Maybe it was you, and a light bulb went off. Talk to Jerry. Call him down at Powell CDC. Call Lila. Okay? Call me. Okay? Because we just identified a characteristic in somebody you love, and maybe now you know how to deal with it. And until that gets figured out, do one thing for me. Just one.